Alrighty, friends, we're back. Your favorite podcast of the week. It's Location Weekly. It's episode number 634, and we are recording on August the 22nd, super early in the morning. Brianna, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm like kind of rushing and getting caught up. I had a quick trip home to South Carolina and Atlanta this weekend and caught up with some friends and family. And so feeling refreshed and drained at the same time, but really good. Just ready to jump into it. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. It's been busy over here as well. Just like work's been hectic lately, just meeting after meeting after meeting and new clients, which is good, but
Great.
onboard
Great
them.
problem.
Yeah, you got to onboard them and like make sure they're happy and all these things that you got.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then we're also just trying to full full tilt right now, trying to get Retail Loco lined up for Atlanta, which is November 1st and 2nd. So lots of work around that too. So busy.
Amazing. Yes, for sure. But we
Yeah,
have a good show.
we do. Get off for us.
Okay. Well, I love this story because if any of you have been to the Philadelphia area, you know very well that there is a convenience store called Wawa that is very popular. I'm a big fan of Wawa. I like their coffee. I like that they have usually 24-hour touch screen to order. So, when I was young, early married days and did not have children, Wawa was a great place to hit up, at those like 2 a.m. late nights. And this is really cool. So they are testing out this all digital store. And so they are setting it up with no shelves, right? Imagine just the touch screen. So this is happening at 3300 Market Street location, right in Philadelphia. So they shut it down for about a week to make some of these changes. And now basically what happens is customers come in and they use the touch screen to order anything and everything that they would, right? From the convenience store. Now, a lot of the Wawas have gas stations attached to them, but there's many that don't, right? That are just the convenience store and the made to order food. So this is really interesting because I feel like there's been so many retailers and, specifically convenience stores or pharmacies and things of that nature, grocery stores that have had a lot of loss prevention challenges. And I think this is an interesting way to address it. Now, the article says nothing about this being a tactic for loss prevention, but I do think that this is a great option because, like, the store stays clean, you know where everything is. It's probably easier to do inventory management and just like, hey, you can order it right there on the touchscreen. You can also order it from their app and then just go in and pick it up. So I think this is like a really great option for certain locations, but they are testing it out. And, Wawa is operating, it says 1,000 of these convenience stores throughout the Northeast and Florida. And now they're breaking ground on locations in North Carolina and Alabama. So they're just like kind of getting into some of those more Southeast states besides Florida. And they plan to double their footprint in the next 10 years. So I think this is like a really interesting test. I want to follow this story. And I could see more stores kind of going to this like touch to order type of a thing. Now, the downside I could see here is that, a lot of times you're doing those impulse buys and you need to like have that tangible, look and feel like, hey, I need this gum on the way out, or my kid's asking for something, or this juice or candy or whatever. So I think that like they might lose out a little bit on basket size with this model. However, I think that depending on the actual store location and maybe the challenges that are presented in that area, this could be pretty positive. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. When I first read the story, that was my first thought, was loss prevention, because we've heard so many of a lot of these retailers now have gone to these self-checkout type of scenarios, right? And we've heard some of the challenges with that and some of the big losses that have racked up with that, and some of the retailers that have kind of completely done that and then kind of ripped it all out and kind of gone back to the old model. So I like this for a couple of reasons. I think Yeah, it certainly helps with the loss prevention piece, and just losing out on goods that people are just grabbing and walking out and not paying for. But I think it also, from a staffing perspective, I think, yes, you're ordering from screens or from your mobile app, but there's still somebody working there. Like, people are actually working there. It's not a completely automated store, who have to go and pick those products off the shelves in the back and do complete the transaction with you. So in some ways, and it kind of reminded me, so I don't think you guys had this in the States, but we used to have a company when I was a kid up here called Consumers Distributing. And you'd walk into these stores and they'd have like these tables in the stores of just catalogs, like old school catalogs. And you'd go and you'd flip through the catalogs and you pick the things you want, and you'd like write the item numbers down on these little slips of paper. And then you take it up to the counter and hand it to the person. And then they would go and like find the products in the back and then bring it out. So this is exactly the same thing, except instead of a paper catalog that you're flipping through, you're doing it on a digital screen. And I think the model, like that model, like always works, right? In some ways, right? But yeah, I think to your point, you do lose out on the last minute sort of, purchases, as people are walking out the checkout. But maybe there's a hybrid. Maybe at the counter where they're, bringing your goods out, there's still some sort of, gum and candy bars and things like that, that you can get on your way out. So, but I love the idea of kind of this complete digital store with no shelves and no products sitting out. It does also change, I think, when you look at it from the advertising perspective. For example, in these convenience stores, you typically have a lot of packaged goods companies, running ad campaigns, or, the cooler screens guys that we've talked about before, or, Budweiser doing special signage around, their beer display and all those kinds of things, you can lose out to some extent in, although there's still, potentially here digital opportunities to do things on the screens, or promos that are running on those screens as you're flipping through the products, on the display. So it's just a different approach, but I really like it, and I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, we're going to jump over to France now, and a story that kind of surfaced through TikTok, about McDonald's using RFID chips on their packaging. And I think this is kind of interesting. So somebody posted that they thought that McDonald's had GPS trackers on all their packaging, and a story was posted last week, and got thousands and thousands of views, and people freaking out and what's going on. Yeah, so it all comes down to that in France now, there are new laws in effect around, reducing waste and packaging and single-use plastics and, all those kinds of things, as we now have here, ban against single-use plastics here in Canada. And so McDonald's has basically adapted their product packaging and so on to be reusable tableware, and they can keep track of where that stuff goes. And so, yes, in fact, there is an RFID chip in the packaging and in the sort of tableware that they're using, which allows them to keep sort of an inventory or stock of where their stuff is. And I think so yeah, they've come out and said, yeah, we fitted RFID chips to track reuse and the environmental impact, and they're not using this for any geolocation of customers. Very clear about that. I'm not sure how you distinguish one from the other, but other than you have no identifiable information of the customer, but where the package is. Yeah, so it helps them keep a track of counting how many plates and cups and all those kinds of things that within their system. So I think this is interesting, right? Like, I think it's we're going to see more and more of the use of RFID in particular in this way. I think you're going to see it baked into packaging at manufacturing level. You're going to see this baked into products. We've already seen companies like Walmart and others, tag clothing and have manufacturers make clothing, with tags built into them from a loss prevention perspective. Maybe that's our theme for today. I don't know, even though we didn't plan it that way. And then there's people out there who are like, yeah, we've seen these RFID stickers on the things, but we want to kind of steal the tableware, and so we're taking the tags off and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's an interesting use case. I think it's obviously, McDonald's is making an effort to be compliant with the laws and be more environmentally friendly, which I think is a good thing. But is this ultimately the technology that we're going to end up with in the end, where it's a sticker that can be easily removed? Probably not. It's probably going to have to be something that's kind of built into the goods, at source. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think I'm curious, what is the cost to make this, and like how much more does it cost, or how much more taxing on the environment is it to create these RFID chips versus just like reuse, one-time use, different goods that maybe are made more sustainably with like bamboo or something. I don't know. I do think that it's interesting. Like, I'm glad that we're making an effort to do things in a more sustainable way. And of course, for like loss prevention purposes. But I'm also curious, like, how many people actually dine in at McDonald's that, have the opportunity for this reusable ware, or how does that work? Like, you take it to go and you have to bring it back. I don't know. So it's a really interesting thing to me. I do feel like it's a stretch right now. And like you said, how do you differentiate between if the RFID is used, just to track things in the store, or like the quantity, or that it's tracking beyond that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that popped into my head was like, I've been to, I think earlier this year, I was in IKEA, and I did stop in the IKEA restaurant and, had a quick bite because I didn't eat anything all day. And when you go to the IKEA restaurant, everything is, using IKEA, plates and cutlery and dishes, and, everything gets, kind of collected up and, kind of washed and cleaned and reused again, right? There's no disposable anything. So in some ways, I guess it's like that. It's trackable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bizarre, but one to follow and see like what continues to kind of be the theme and customer based response to this.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's go to something that's kind of more a little more sporty. And fun fact, I ended up in ad tech by accident. I actually studied sport management, so I love stories that are like bringing together tech and sports, and this is one. So there's a company called ShotQuality, actually based very close to where I am. And it is a basketball analytics tool, and it enables coaches and players to optimize their shot selection. So they are trying to help like the world's best basketball teams win by, optimizing player and team selection through these predictive analytics. So they're using their technology for obviously like how do we improve our game, but they're using advanced computer vision and machine learning models. And they're saying they have over like 50 million data points to deliver these first of a kind data set around the quality of every shot. Now, another company, Huddle. Huddle is a software provider that's for gaming operators, specifically in regulated markets, right, around the world. And they're focused on growing gaming businesses. They help, companies lower their cost, operate more effectively, and then also improve customer experience. So these two companies, ShotQuality and Huddle, have now partnered together to introduce what they're calling ShotQuality's Score Center. And they have this unique location data for Huddle's clients. So, I mean, and when they're talking about precise location data, obviously you're thinking about the location of players on the court, the location of the ball, not anything that's happening in a creepy way, like, tracking cups that are being stolen.
There's no loss prevention here.
Well, maybe like game loss prevention, but
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
yeah, so they're really looking at this score center. It's offering real-time predictions for live games. They're hoping to drive fan engagement. Also, I mean, a fun, I think, twist that really is the moneymaker here. It's going to potentially improve bettors' performance. So you think about how sports betting and gambling has become more legalized and more mainstream over the past like 5 to 10 years. Well, now this is a tool that you could use to potentially help you place better bets. So again, powered by ShotQuality's AI and computer vision algorithms, generating that precise location data. And then they'll have like these advanced analysis on which teams and players are overperforming, underperforming, all by like where the players are on the court. So really interesting. They're working with NCAA, the men's NCAA, some NBA teams, and some international basketball games as well. So I think this is really cool. I love, it's very like Moneyball to me a little bit. You've got like all of the analytics, but it's really what's happening in real time. And when they were talking about why they created it and kind of the background, it's like, well, you have some players who maybe are typically underperforming, but then you'll see them hit back to back to back, 3-pointers or something. Or you'll have guys that are, maybe above average players that might miss an open layup or a dunk or something. So it's like more about those predictions and understanding, I guess, what to call and when, and really aiming the coaches. I still think there's like this old school versus new school mentality, and like how much do you lean into analytics and data, and how much do you just trust your gut and understanding like how the team works. But I think a blended approach is really great that we have that option now in the sports world. It's super interesting. So I like the story. What do you think?
Yeah, I do too. I think it's all sports have really moved to these kinds of analytics right now, and as you were talking about this, because I don't have a lot to add to. I think there's a ton of value in this type of data for the coaches, for the players themselves. Not unlike how we spend hours watching video and analyzing percentages and all sorts of other things that we do in baseball and other sports. So I think anything you can get your hands on that's going to improve, the player's game or the team's performance, I think is a good thing. I think the next level from this, though, is, how do you then take some of this data and, sort of make that available to the fan, in the sense that, broadcasters can use this, for example. We know companies like Stats Perform that are supplying, a lot of the statistical and historical information, to the broadcasters, as they're, kind of relaying this to us at fans watching on television. And I remember, for example, our old friends like Alex and Mikhail over at Blue Byte, for example, who've, partnered with Adidas and, had their trackers inside of the World Cup balls, and you could track kind of the movement and velocity and the speed and kind of direction of the ball, as it was being, kicked around. And we could see that, sort of as a fan, visualized in, real time, graphs and analytics and things like that. So I think there are opportunities to, certainly help the team in the performance, which is obviously where they're focused, but there could be opportunities here, kind of take that out to a fan experience piece, and potentially even, how that impacts, betting and all sorts of other things, down the road. So I like it. I think there's a lot of opportunities in this space. I think you're going to see more and more, the use of location data and other technologies that we talk about regularly as a way to, sort of further enhance performance and game and fan experience.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, on to our final story. So this is local here in Toronto, where I am, and a company called ARway.ai these are a sort of indoor navigation company that's powered by augmented reality and AI, using computer vision or visual markers, I should say, to navigate around, a building. And so they've announced a new pilot with a Dubai-based shopping mall, as well as a pilot with a Southern California-based mall. And so, I think this is interesting, because if you follow the space of indoor navigation and wayfinding over the years, as we have since we've been doing this podcast since 2010, there's been a lot of evolution, right? We've had, the use of Bluetooth technology and beacons. We've had Wi-Fi based navigation. We've had, smart lighting systems from companies like Signify and formerly Philips, using luminaires in the buildings. We've had magnetic positioning systems from companies like Indoor Atlas and others. And I think one of the newer ways to do this now is using AR and visual-based markers. And so there are a couple of different companies that are at this right now. Obviously, ARway is one of those, and I think everybody's kind of out there pushing, these pilots and trying to gain traction around this. And so the way this essentially works is you walk into these buildings with a scanning technology, and you basically scan the entire building, capturing images of everything you see around you, like the walls and what's on the walls and where the doors are and where the windows are, and where the elevators and where everything is in this building, all visually captured and then stored. And then essentially using AR and the camera lens within the app of within the phone, as you're walking around with this app, basically it's kind of, looking through the camera essentially and seeing, picking up visual markers or cues, and then saying, hey, based on the stored scan of the building that we have, from that one-time scan at the beginning, we know you're in this position at this place within the building. And so the advantages of that obviously is it requires no hardware to be installed in the properties. It does require, some upfront work in scanning. And, there are some, issues with AR still today. But what I like about this technology is that it's kind of optimized to work across multiple platforms, so that it can, it's iOS, it's Android, it's designed to support some of the headsets that are out there, as in Vision Pro and the Magic Leap and Microsoft HoloLens. So it's kind of ready for the future, let's call it that, as a way of navigation within a retail environment. And we know inside of these big malls, traditional GPS doesn't work well. You have walls and pillars and concrete. And so I think a lot of these big malls, whether it's the Dubai use case here or the Southern California mall use case that they're talking about, I think there are a lot of experimentation going on within the mall space. Our good friend Karsten, who's part of the LBMA, he's also involved with a similar company to this out of Austria right now called Arrive. Again, using AR and visual markers to do navigation. They're all similarly doing experiments with malls and museums and other types of properties in this space. So I think it's definitely sort of the next level or the evolution of a method for indoor navigation that we're seeing, some experimentation around right now, and in some cases, some really good results.
Yeah. So just a couple of quick things. One, I do love the technology. I like that there's no hardware. It's less taxing. The name of the company is like every buzzword possible in one phrase, AR.ai. Love it. Not really, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, I just think about like consumer adoption. And I can tell you that this is geared towards potentially a younger demographic, right? And probably one that's not spending the bulk of money and revenue that is being generated in these shopping centers. And I can say, I don't know about you, but I could tell you, like, if I'm shopping or looking for something. This just happened this week, and we were at the Battery in Atlanta where the Braves Stadium is. And I'm looking for a specific restaurant. I don't pull out my phone. There's a directory thing right in front of me. It's touch screen. I'm just like, oh, where's that restaurant? Oh, it's here. It took me 2 seconds to do that. Whereas the amount of time to like pull out my phone, figure out like what app or which map or what, system or website I need to use to get to this whole, mapping system, I think is like much more complicated, and it just takes longer. So I don't know. For me, there's like a little bit of a friction point there. And so I'm not sure. I mean, I think back to like whenever I started getting into location-based space, right? We were very early on with the startup I was working with probably 15 years ago. And it was like location-based proximity marketing, but you had to log into the Wi-Fi or enable your Bluetooth. And then it was like push, and you had to, it was a lot of friction, I would say, into the actual adoption of it. And I think that was like a pain point. And so I still think that in some of these new technologies that we're introducing, specifically for consumers and shoppers, whether it's in a grocery store or in a shopping center, there's still a little bit of a friction point. So I'm looking for that like startup or that company that's going to come in and figure out a way to remove that. Because if you can either alter consumer behavior or figure out a way to work with existing consumer behavior, I think that's what ultimately is going to dictate the success in that, specifically in this type of a niche field. So.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think there's always friction when you're experimenting with new technologies, right? And how do you get market penetration, right? And how do you get consumers to buy into it, right? And I think some environments like I think Mall of America, where we just had Retail Loco, back a few months ago now. It's a massive space. And Patrick, the guy who runs technology over there, will tell you first off, like the in-mall navigation system, the screen-based navigation system and their app they're not synced up, right? They don't work well together. There are challenges there. So I think there are some opportunities to advance this and make it better, but I think from an adoption point of view, this is the kind of thing that is going to take time. Even when we were there, we had Chris Isles from the Minnesota Twins come and speak, and they're playing around with an AR app in stadium. And so this is like a gaming environment that layers a whole experience while you're there visually on top of what you see on the field. You're seeing a whole nother, sort of branded gaming experience, really for entertainment based. But I downloaded the thing while I was at the game, and it took me forever to download the app, like, because it's massive, like this AR app, like it takes a lot of bandwidth and a lot of space and a lot of power to pull it down. And then just the renderings and the process, can take a lot of time. But I think as a navigation tool, there's power here. And, like I said, you got companies like Arrive coming out of Austria, and others that I think are, pushing into this space. And I think you'll also see, some of the more traditional players. If we think back to guys like Shopper Track and some of these folks that Retail Next and Path Intelligence and all these guys that have been in the indoor sort of analytics space, will start to push in and bring offerings out that use visual markers and AR as well. But we're early days in this.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's it. That's our show for this week. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't yet reached out to us, Retail Loco is coming to Atlanta in partnership with Simon Malls and Nobu Hotel at Phipps Plaza. And that's November 1st and 2nd. We would love to see you there. Tickets are available now through the lbma.org. And if you're interested in speaking or being a sponsor, we'd love to hear from you about that as well. Reach out to Aubriana or I. We're easily found on the social media channels, and we can help you with that. And for our listeners and viewers out there, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. If you have feedback, let us know about that as well. And otherwise, we'll see you next week for another show. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.